Welcome, grade 9 students. I am absolutely thrilled to have you here for today's explainer. We are diving into G9 Biology U08 L02 Reptiles and Birds and Reptiles. Get ready because we're going to explore some of the most fascinating evolutionary leaps in the entire history of life on Earth.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here's our roadmap for today. We'll hit our lesson objectives and the amniotic egg, check out modern reptile groups and avian biology, then look at the evolution of mammals, tackle a misconception check, and finish with a quick recap.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1, Lesson Objectives and Amniotes.
So by the end of this explainer, you're going to completely master concepts 8.29 for reptiles and birds and 8.30 for mammals. To pull that off, we first have to understand the absolutely incredible amniotic egg. Why? Because this was the game changer that allowed animals to finally break their dependence on water for reproduction. Thanks to that egg, we can actually trace the evolutionary branching of amniotes as they moved out into drier environments and literally conquered the land.
And this brilliantly illustrates exactly how that early evolutionary branching happened. Millions of years ago, early amniotes split into two main lines, and we categorize them by looking at their skulls. First, the synapsids. They have one temporal fenestra, which is just a fancy biological term for a window or opening in the skull right behind each eye. This single opening lineage is the one that eventually led to mammals. Then on the other side, we have the diopsids. Di meaning two, right? So they have two temporal fenestrae, or two skull openings. This diopsid lineage gave rise to all modern reptiles and birds. This structural split in the skull is literally the defining evolutionary fork in the road between you and a dinosaur. Moving right along to Section 2, 8.29.1, Modern Reptile Groups. Following that diapsid lineage, let's look at the modern reptiles we see alive today. Class Reptilia includes four really diverse living clades. First up, Crocodilia, which gives us alligators and crocodiles. Second is Sphenodontia, and today that's represented exclusively by the tuataras down in New Zealand. Third is Squamata, which is actually the largest group, covering all our lizards and snakes. And fourth, we've got Testudines, the turtles and tortoises. Now, to survive strictly on land, these groups share some vital adaptations. They all have this tough, scaly skin containing the protein keratin. It's an amazing adaptation because it severely cuts down on water loss. But, because they can't breathe through that tough skin, all reptiles have to rely entirely on lungs for respiration. And lastly, most are ectothermic, meaning they rely on their outside environment to regulate their body heat. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is a verified example from the Smithsonian National Zoo. When you think of a crocodile, you probably picture a really slow, belly-dragging creature on land, right? Well, the Cuban crocodile can actually gallop like a horse, literally. By pushing off with their hind legs and moving their fore and hind legs alternately in pairs, they can hit speeds of over 17 kilometers per hour on land. It burns a massive amount of energy, sure, but it's an incredible terrestrial adaptation for a lightning-fast ambush. All right, transitioning to Section 3, 8.29.2, Avian Biology. Let's turn to another group of highly specialized diapsids, birds. Evolving directly from small bipedal theropod dinosaurs, birds have developed some spectacular adaptations, mostly geared toward one thing: powered flight. Unlike other modern reptiles, birds are endothermic, or more specifically, homeothermic, which just means they maintain a high, constant internal body temperature. Doing that takes immense energy. To help, they've got feathers. They use fluffy down feathers for thermal insulation and structured contour feathers to create this smooth, super aerodynamic surface. But flying is exhausting, so their biology demands extreme efficiency. Their lungs have this unique unidirectional airflow, maximizing the oxygen exchange they desperately need for that high metabolism. And to minimize body weight so they can actually get off the ground, they have fascinating physiological modifications, like the complete lack of a urinary bladder. No way, right? They don't carry extra water weight. They simply reabsorb water in the cloaca and expel uric acid instead.
This intense need to shed weight brings us to a crucial biological definition: pneumatic bones. In birds, many bones are actually hollow rather than filled with heavy tissue. But wait, they aren't fragile at all. Inside, they contain these structural cross struts of bone called trabeculae. Think of these struts kind of like the internal steel scaffolding of a bridge. They provide immense structural strength but dramatically reduce the overall weight of the skeleton. It's an absolutely essential skeletal modification that makes flying possible in the first place.
Let's move on to Section 4, 8.30, Evolution of Mammals. Okay, we're shifting gears completely here. We are going way back to the other side of our original evolutionary tree, back to the synapsids. The synapsid lineage eventually gave rise to mammals. Today, living mammals are divided into 3 distinct clades, and they are distinguished strictly by their totally unique reproductive methods. First, we have the monotremes. Their reproduction is completely unique among mammals because they actually lay leathery eggs. The platypus and the echidna are the only living examples of this. Next are the marsupials. Their embryos are born in a very premature, almost fetal state, and they actually complete their development nursing inside a mother's pouch. Think of the kangaroo or the Tasmanian devil. Finally, we have the eutherians, or placental mammals. In this group, a complex placenta connects the developing fetus directly to the mother, which allows for really advanced nutrient exchange and development before birth. This is by far the largest group, and it includes animals ranging from whales to rodents, all the way up to us, humans.
Which brings us to Section 5, Misconception and Formative Check. All right, Grade 9, it is time to test your instincts and clear up a very common biological myth. Did modern birds evolve from the bird-hipped ornithischian dinosaurs? The name makes it sound incredibly obvious, doesn't it? Think about it for just a second.
The answer is actually no. It's one of the most famous, counterintuitive quirks in all of biology. Birds actually evolved from the saurischian or lizard-hipped dinosaur lineage. Specifically, they evolved from a group of bipedal predators called theropods located within that lizard-hipped group. So, the crucial point is, do not let the name bird-hipped fool you. That entire ornithischian lineage actually died out completely.
Let's do one more quick formative check to test your memory. Think way back to the very start of our lesson today, back to the branching of the evolutionary tree. Which early amnio lineage gave rise to mammals?
Synapsids. If you said synapsids, you absolutely nailed it. Remember, the synapsids diverged early on from the diapsids, and they are characterized by having that single post-orbital skull opening, just one temporal fenestra right behind the eye. That single window in the skull is the structural hallmark of the mammalian ancestor.
Finally, Section 6, Recap of Required Concepts.
Let's move to Chiron and see how this builds our complete biological picture. Chronologically, it all started when early amniotes split into synapsids, which became mammals, and diapsids, which became reptiles and birds. We saw how modern reptiles conquered the land using water-retaining scaly skin and those highly protective amniotic eggs. Then, we learned that birds are highly specialized, endothermic diapsids perfectly engineered from the ground up for flight. Finally, we reviewed how mammals, the descendants of the synapsids, branched into 3 modern clades defined entirely by reproduction: the egg-laying monotremes, the pouch-bearing marsupials, and the placental eutherians.
To leave you with a final provocative thought for today, I really want you to consider this. How did the evolution of one simple fluid-filled amniotic egg forever change the trajectory of life on Earth? Just think about that. That single, self-contained, waterproof capsule essentially untethered early creatures from the ocean, allowing all of the diverse, magnificent animals we studied today, from galloping crocodiles to soaring birds to ourselves, to spread out and conquer the dry land. It's a profound reminder of how one specific evolutionary leap can completely change the world. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep up your focused learning, and I will see you next time.